And greetings, everyone, and welcome to Buzz for Good, where we talk all things nonprofit, the people they serve, and the good they do. And today's show is yet another reminder of the breadth and depth of the powerful work that nonprofits do to build better community for us all. Now, if you have a garden, you know it's almost harvest time, so I will be sharing with you a conversation with Mo McGonagle, director of the Roanoke Foodshed Network, about its work strengthening our region's agricultural ecosystem that now includes a food and farmers trail. I'm also going to share with you a nonprofit engaged in the historical preservation of an iconic Roanoke, Virginia landmark, Fishburn Mansion, aka Mountain View, and a new concert series this fall called the Fishburn Sessions, which you can attend. And lastly, I'll share with you a personal project that I've been on, inspired by a nonprofit we featured on my TV show Buzz back in 2021 called Christiansburg Institute. 160 years ago, Black Americans in our Appalachian corner of Virginia rose up from segregation and slavery to create a school whose reputation stood alongside Tuskegee, Hampton, and other sentinels of Black education. But now, external threats from the Trump administration and infighting among its descendants threaten to destroy its inspirational legacy. I have written a book about Christiansburg Institute's history that I will start releasing on Substack on Thursday, August the 13th. And I'm going to share a bit of that book with hopes that you will be inspired to subscribe for free, and all you need is an email address. Now, my name is Michael Hemphill. I'm the creator and host of the TV show Buzz that airs every Wednesday night on PBS, where we feature the great work of nonprofit organizations and the marketing professionals affiliated with the American Advertising Federation of Roanoke, who donate their time and talent helping these life-giving organizations achieve more buzz. You can find out more on my website, buzzforgood.com. That's buzz, B-U-Z-Z, 4, good.com. As well as social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok, all at Buzz for Good. And now, let's begin today's Buzz for Good with Mo McGonagle, director of Roanoke Foodshed Network. It is my pleasure to welcome here to Buzz for Good, Mo McGonagle, who is the director of the Roanoke Foodshed Network. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Michael. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. So let me start off with an easy one for you. What is we're getting to be harvest time, right? What's the fruit or the vegetable that you're most excited about, not only harvesting, but eating?
Gosh, this is kind of an obvious answer, but you know.
You're going to say tomatoes, aren't you?
The tomato. I mean, there's honestly, the distinction between an off-season and an in-season tomato is vast. So it's kind of like eating an entirely different fruit altogether. So I have a lot of tomatoes. I've been out of town for the past 2 weeks, but I have a lot of tomatoes ripening in the garden right now that I'm excited to get back home to.
Nice. Is there a go-to for the tomato sandwich, like a variety?
I love the Cherokee purples. Yeah, gosh, any kind of larger heirloom slicer tomato for that. And then I love the little sun gold tomatoes. I like to slow cook them in the oven and kind of partially dehydrate them and put them in all kinds of pastas and sandwiches and everything in between.
Yeah, I have not eaten yet today, and this is probably a bad decision on my part, not having eaten while we're talking about tomatoes and all the things that you could do with them. That's wonderful.
The pre-lunch interview. So.
It's not good. So tell me about your garden.
Yeah, so I live in Roanoke City, and we actually have a garden in our front yard that we established with some friends, and mostly grow vegetables, but this year we've kind of expanded our flower production too, which has been really fun with some dahlias and sunflowers lining the house. So do a lot of spring crops like the kale, lettuce, spinach, kind of all the leafy greens, and then right now moving into the summer harvest with some yellow squash and zucchini and tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers and all of that goodness.
Love it. All right, I promise we're going to get to Roanoke Foodshed Network in just a second, but I am fascinated by the fact that you have your garden in your front yard because I think the stereotypical model is front yard is for a bunch of grass that you have to mow, and then any gardening would happen out of sight in the backyard. So, what led to the front yard being an option for you? And I'm inspired to actually do that myself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would say just from a practical standpoint, we have a big black walnut tree in the backyard.
Mm,
So there's a lot of shade back there, and then also the black walnut gives off the chemical to the soil, which makes it hard for a lot of other crops to grow underneath it. But also, I would say the benefit of the front yard garden is that everybody in the neighborhood gets to enjoy it.
hmm
And I feel like it kind of establishes a different framework or model, kind of source of inspiration for other people to reimagine what they do with their lawns.
Yeah.
Because we can really do so much. And um, obviously everybody wants a little grassy patch in their yard to kind of lay out or have a barbecue or whatever it may be. But um, yeah, the front yard, we get so many neighbors that pass by that just comment on how lovely it is to have so many flowers and plants growing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful. Definitely inspired because that's not the model typically that you would find in a suburb or a neighborhood. And so
Hmm.
it seems like that's an untapped source of farmland
Yeah,
that we don't utilize as much as we should.
exactly. Yeah, we're really trying to re-inspire the home gardening movement, and
Hmm
in the neighborhood where I live, we have a lot of refugee immigrants, and it's really inspiring to me to see how they farm on their entire yards in their with traditional foods from their home countries
hmm
and with traditional farming practices that they learned from their home countries. And so that's a source of inspiration for me and, ways that we can kind of re-enliven that culture here in
hmm
our community. I feel really inspired by.
Yeah. And speaking of inspiration, this is, we're going to transition now to actually why we're having this conversation. But, several years ago when I first got to know LEAP, the local environmental and agricultural project, they introduced me to the concept of urban gardening or an urban farmer. And I blank Cam Terry, is that his name? I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah. And when I got to meet him and how at the time he was basically on this circuit of about, I don't know, like probably close to 5 to 10 different backyards and little parcels that people had allowed him to kind of come and do some gardening in. And he was making a full living out of just going to home where he had a little backyard garden that he had access to and was growing all sorts of great stuff. And it's like, yeah, we can do a better job sustaining ourselves without having to go to Kroger or Food Lion to make that happen.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, Cam Terry is definitely a model and an inspiration, I feel like, for the Roanoke community in ways that we
Hmm
can do that in the urban context of our city.
Yeah, yeah. Well, once again, joined here on Buzz for Good by with Mo McGonagle, who is the director of the Roanoke Foodshed Network. And now that we've talked about your personal gardening habits and favorites and all that, let's transition to what exactly is the Roanoke Foodshed Network.
Yeah, so the Roanoke Foodshed Network is a collaborative of community-based organizations, farmers, food businesses, agencies, institutions that work across diverse sectors of the food system. So if you think about everything from farming and all that goes into it in the process of getting that food to the plate, and then the way that interfaces with our society across issues of public health, food access, environmental health, land access, kind of all the dimensions of our larger food system. So the Roanoke Foodshed Network exists to bring all of those partners together. And through a foundation of building strong and trusting relationships, we work to collaboratively, well, support collaboration and then support a vision for our regional food system. So we work across the two city, seven county region. So bringing partners together from across Roanoke and Salem cities, Roanoke County, and then all the contiguous counties
Mhm.
surrounding.
And talk about
To kind of
some of the partners that you're talking about real quick. I mean, besides the growers and the usual suspects, I believe like Carillion is one of them.
Yeah, Carillion, Feeding Southwest Virginia, the Virginia Association for Biological Farming,
Hmm.
Virginia Tech Center for Food Systems and Community Transformation, a number of farmer partners. You mentioned, Cam Terry with Garden Variety Harvests, Singing Spring Farm out of Craig County is on our leadership team, um, as well as Roanoke City Economic Development. So we work closely with a lot of kind of city officials as well as the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission, um, community
Nice.
organizations like One Valley. They run community gardens in the city.
Hmm.
Yeah, so broad swath. There's
Right.
about uh, 10 core partners in our leadership team, but we've worked in different capacities, probably with 80 partners from across the region.
Hmm. And there was I believe, a USDA grant that kind of helped kick this off or is funding it now. Talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so earlier you asked about our involvement with LEAP, and LEAP was really a core partner and kind of thought leader in developing the Roanoke Foodshed Network, and for many years was the backbone organization driving the network forward. So it really started with a lot of community partners coming around the table saying, how do we better work together to build more resilience across our regional food system from a systems perspective.
Hmm.
And so the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission and LEAP were core partners in that. And they really started by kind of researching what's the state of our food system as it stands now, from issues of farm viability to food access. Um, and in 2020, the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission did a public planning process to create a local food plan. So all of that, they also hosted farmer listening sessions through LEAP and Virginia Cooperative Extension, and LEAP also conducted their own research report on the state of our food system. So all of that research led to an initial planning grant with LEAP as the backbone organization to really build what is now the Roanoke Foodshed Network. So building those
Hmm.
relationships, building the vision and the mission, bringing the partners together to really say, what is it that we want to do together? So after that 3-year process of getting all of our foundational parts and pieces together, we built an implementation plan in collaboration with all of our partners. And then that fed into a grant that we're now implementing through the USDA Regional Food System Partnership Grant. So that was a really wonderful, very
Hmm.
grateful to have gotten that funding because it brought about $850,000 to our community food
Wow.
system across a 25 partner project. Um,
Well, so I mean, obviously there's a lot of funding going towards this. There are a lot of community players, involved with this. But I mean, why is it such an issue right now? Like for someone who is accustomed just, going to, like I said, Kroger or Food Lion, getting their groceries and coming home and cooking it up and eating. Why, what's driving all this? Why should people care?
yeah, yeah. Well, I would say, COVID-19 really brought to light a lot of the fissures in our global supply chain. So just from a
Hmm.
resilience perspective, first and foremost, we're kind of at the brink of facing a lot of, not to get too dark here,
No, go ahead.
different uh different crises that are kind of coming together. Some people call it the meta crises, the crises of public health, the crises of environmental degradation, the crises of climate change, and um, the ways that an uncertain climate, in fact, impacts our food supply. There's obviously, as we're seeing overseas currently, the political disruptions through war
Yeah.
and the ways that that impacts supply chain, and then things like pandemics. So there's just a lot, we're living in a moment of a lot of uncertainty, and the more we can create cross-sector solutions to well, all of those crises that we're facing are considered to be wicked problems or problems that don't have necessarily singular or clear solutions to them. And
Hmm.
so um, what do we do in the face of that? We bring partners together with expertise across diverse sectors of a system to look within a local or regional, in our case, regional context, a two city, seven county region to say, what's possible within this local context? How do we create more regional resilience for our
Hmm.
food supply? And how
Not only to produce, but also to make sure that we're consuming more local, regional, so that it's, we're growing what we need to then consume, for our families.
Yeah, like supporting growing our farming base, making
Yeah.
farming a more viable career, helping farmers that are currently farming staying in farming because farmland loss and farm loss is a tremendous challenge. Like over the past US Census, they said something like 10% of Virginia's farmland was lost to development pressure, among
Hmm.
other things.
Hmm.
Um, so and the reality is it's going to be immensely difficult to supply to have full food sovereignty from a regional like this the regional perspective that we're looking at with our two city, seven county region, but any opportunities we can do to ensure new farmers are farming, that that farmland is not going into development, that we have market channels for farmers to be able to sell their product and then beyond the economics of it, that food and healthy, nutritious food is available to all people in our community, regardless of price and um, regardless of regardless of their ability to afford it.
Hmm.
You know, thinking about food dignity and food as a basic human right. And these are really lofty goals, and so I'm always thinking about this in terms of how do we bridge together where there's energy and momentum, where there's capacity and funding, and where there's kind of partnership and vision, and within that space, what's possible.
Hmm.
But the more that we bring partners together, we really see that the relationships are the foundation for anything to happen in a community. And without that
Yeah.
as the foundation, and then being able to resource the relationships to bring those ideas to life and be a convener to bring inspiration from other parts of the country as well to say, look at what this community is doing over here. Let's learn from them. Let's see how we can implement this in our own community.
Yeah, so you're
So,
cultivating, not just crop production, but also human production, just the relationships, people coming together who want to see this happen. And I'll throw my community's name in the hat. So I live in the Shawsville and Elliston community of Montgomery County, and there are no grocery stores here. However, sadly, and this is not to throw shade, as the kids say, on Dollar General, but we're not considered to be in a food desert because we have a Dollar General, and which I think many communities would not really regard as a grocery store. But so really trying to figure out what can we do to meaningfully, feed our and healthily feed our families here in our community, without, outside of what is, supplied at the Dollar General. So would love to be considered part of this conversation moving forward, just outside of this radio show with you guys to figure out
yeah,
how we can do
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Montgomery County is part of the region that we're
Okay.
representing. So yeah.
Excellent. All
So
right.
absolutely. Let's chat.
Yeah, let's chat. Love it. Once again, joined here on Buzz for Good by Mo McGonagle, who is the director of the Roanoke Foodshed Network. And one of your volunteers or interns reached out to me to tell me about not only the network, but also that there is a new food trail that you are kind of, I guess, getting off the ground. What does that look like?
Yeah, yeah. So this really emerged. This has been a project many, many years in the making, and emerged as an idea or a need from expressed from farmers directly in some of the farmer listening sessions that were hosted.
Hmm.
Um, that it is extremely difficult to both run a farm business, to manage the complexities of working within a constantly changing climate, and be able to establish markets for products and then do all the marketing and storytelling and ed consumer education work that's required
Yep.
to convince a customer to pay a little bit more money for, let's say, a local tomato. And so the idea that emerged was to have a entity such as ours create kind of regional marketing, education, storytelling um, campaign that can bring more customers into the fold through a collective strategy. And so, through the USDA grant, we were awarded some funding to actually bring this idea into reality. And so, as of this past May, we just launched the Roanoke Region Food and Farm Trail, which is it's both a website and kind of digital database of farms, food businesses, agritourism experiences,
Mm.
farm to table restaurants, farm stands, kind of all things local food. There's a calendar of events too, where people can get connected to an array of different events on farms, connected to food systems. Um, and it's all searchable. So you can search by geography, you can search by product type. So if a customer is coming in and wanting to find who to contact about local eggs or where they might sell their product, they can search eggs and find all the farms in their region. Or maybe
Nice.
they live over in Botetourt County and they want to find somebody directly in their community. They can look at Botetourt farmers and eggs and see who comes up. And so the website, though, in its vision is the idea, or the kind of the vision behind it is it's a digital space that can help make connections in real life. And
Hmm.
so, um, how do we connect residents and visitors to residents of our community, visitors to our community, to the farms, to the food businesses directly in our community in real life so that
Hmm.
they can become more connected to the products there, both through being able to purchase that local food, but also being able to have experiences on farms to learn about the food system. And so paired with the website, we also are working with a documentarian, Daniel James of Herd Ventures, and he's been going out and has done probably, I don't know, 10 to 15 different shoots with local farms and food businesses across the region, and full-length interviews with the farmers, and has been weaving those stories together into a six-part docuseries that we call Good Food, Good People.
Mm.
And it tells the story of the food system, starting with the farming perspective and then moving out into the second episode is all about the collaborative marketplace. And the third episode, which we'll be releasing soon, will be about the missing infrastructure. And so through that process, where our hope is through the people and the places that make up our food system, they can tell the story of the food system in our region from um, their own perspective and help educate the broader public as to why this is an important thing to support. And then through that, also, the last thing I'll say is the farmers and the food businesses get all the assets, the photos, the B-roll, video content, as well as some consulting time with DJ so that they can use those assets to support their own individual businesses as well.
Wonderful. What's the website?
Yeah, RoanokeFoodAndFarmTrail.com.
Roanoke Food and Farm Trail.com. Okay. So
Yeah.
you go there, you could say, I live in Shawsville in Montgomery County, and I'm curious to see who grows or who sells eggs, who has beef, who has tomatoes and other produce for sale, and I can go support that person.
Absolutely. Yep. And the thing I'll say is, we're kind of in our infancy in building out the database. So if you are a farmer, if you are a food business, we're always, and you're operating within our region, we're
Hmm.
still on onboarding and we'll be continuing to onboard new businesses. So um, it's by no means comprehensive at this point in time, but
Sure.
we're at a good starting place. I think we have maybe 70 listings across the region.
Okay.
And the other thing I'll say too is through this grant program, we were able to partner and support with funding some of the other trails that are connected to our region. So
Hmm.
we're working closely with an organization called Land and Table, and they work in the Lynchburg, Bedford region. So Bedford is kind of our shared territory. And they created a guide called Local Food Lynchburg. We've also worked with Live, Work, Eat, Grow, who's doing the same thing in the New River Valley.
Hmm.
And then historically, Floyd County has had an existing farm trail called the Floyd Farm Trail. So through our USDA grant, we're helping support the existing Floyd Farm Trail as well. And so we all come together as trail partners and kind of strategize ways that we can mutually uplift each other's trails, kind of be a community of practice, so to speak.
Beautiful. Well, coming to an end to our conversation with Mo McGonagle, who is the director of the Roanoke Foodshed Network. And you're talking about this food trail. What would be, or what has been the most surprising stop or offering that perhaps you've seen, pop up that we grow or sell here in our region?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, one thing I'll say generally is that our community has such a rich array of diversified farms. We have a lot of really small farms, largely because of the topography of our land.
Hmm.
And so, one thing I'll say is a lot of farmers offer a lot of different types of products. So, there's vegetable farmers that also sell flowers, that also do meat. Um, and as far as unique products, gosh, I mean, I love the culinary mushrooms. We have
Mm.
uh, Den Hill or Harder Mushrooms. They switched their name recently. Out of Montgomery County, they
Yeah.
do a really wide array of mushrooms that you usually don't find in the grocery store.
Huh.
Um, so that's a really unique, fun one. There's also I love kind of you pick operations.
Yeah.
So you pick berry, you pick apples as we're getting into the fall.
Hmm.
Just there's nothing like the taste of a Virginia apple in the fall.
Yep.
So
Beautiful. All right. So, what's the thing that you wanted to come on here and share that perhaps we haven't covered already about your work or anything related to, Roanoke farming?
yeah, I guess one thing I would say is the one of the things that gets me most excited about this work is the fact that eating is a cultural act and it's something that we do as humans every single day. Um, I would say most humans.
Yep.
And and it's woven into our cultural traditions, cultural practice. It's woven into our memories, our ancestry, woven into our ways of life and our connection to the land. And so, as the Roanoke Foodshed Network, one thing that we have started to do and explore is ways to integrate arts and culture into
Mm.
the programming that we offer. So how do we bring community together around food as a cultural act? So
Mm.
we've done that in a wide array of ways. For example, hosting uh, a year ago, we hosted two different foodways events. One was an Indigenous foodways event where we worked with two Indigenous women, one of them a member of the Monacan Nation, and Victoria Ferguson. She's done a lot of research on traditional Monacan foodways. So what were the and food way practices of the Monacan people. And so she presented on her research, and then another indigenous chef from the Lumbee Nation, Renee Locklear White, who lives in Virginia currently, she used a lot of those traditional foods that we still find present today in Virginia to create like a 10-course meal where
Ooh.
all the attendees got to taste a wide array of native Virginia, traditionally indigenous foods to our region, like um, sumac tea, deer
Hmm.
jerky, ramps, kind of a wide, delicious array. So that was a fantastic event. And then really quickly too, we also hosted in partnership with a number of other community organizations an African American Foodways event where
Mm.
we were able to bring a director of a documentary film called Rhythms of the Land um, to do a screening of the film, which is a documentary that tells the story of Black farmers in the US from the enslavement period to today
Hmm.
through the stories of Black farm elders in the South. And so the director of the film was able to come for the screening. We did a community screening event, and then we did a panel discussion with Black farmers in our region, as well as had an African American foodways potluck. So that was also just an incredibly fun and inspiring event. And um, so we're really passionate about weaving arts and culture into the ways we do our work, because number one, it cultivates joy, it cultivates connection, and it cultivates a remembrance of food as a central way that we come together as community and a central way that we live our lives. So I feel incredibly passionate and excited about that and the ways that we can weave that back into our community.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Mo McGonagle, director of the Roanoke Foodshed Network, for coming here on the Buzz for Good and sharing all the great work that you're doing. And for more information about your particular program organization, you would go to where?
RoanokeFoodshedNetwork.org and then RoanokeFoodandFarmTrail.com.
Lovely. Well, Mo McGonagle, thank you so much again for all the work that you're doing, being a Buzz for Good in the Roanoke region.
Thanks so much, Michael. Appreciate being able to share about our work here.
Now, next up, we shift to a different kind of nonprofit cultivation, this one inspired by a giant of Roanoke, Virginia's history, J.B. Fishburn, and specifically the home he built in Roanoke called Mountain View, which is sometimes known as the Fishburn Mansion. This fall, on the first Thursdays of the months, September to December, the nonprofit Friends of the Blue Ridge, in partnership with Roanoke City Parks and Recreation and Friends of Mountain View, will host a concert series called the Fishburn Sessions. These intimate listening room events will feature some of the Blue Ridge region's best musical talent. And you can find out more at blueridgefriends.org. Now, here on today's show, I'm going to share with you the voice of historian and former Roanoke Mayor Nelson Harris, who narrates this new 15-minute video about Fishburn's legacy. And you can find out more at friendsofmountainview.org.
Well, Mountain View is one of the most beautiful historic homes that we still have in the city of Roanoke. And when I was growing up in Roanoke, we called it the Fishburn Mansion. I realize, now it's referred to as Mountain View. It's owned by the city of Roanoke, bequested to them by Mr. Fishburn for use as a recreation center, and clearly an anchor of the Mountain View neighborhood. When you go in Mountain View, the architectural features you just do not see in homes today. Even homes that are crafted to look historic do not have that kind of authenticity to them that Mountain View does. So you really are stepping back in time. It's just a stately, gorgeous home. And we're lucky to have it in the city. Mr. Fishburn was a tremendous influence in and upon Roanoke in the last century. Born in 1865 in the Boone's Mill area, moved with his parents to Kentucky, and then through the influence of an uncle who said there's opportunity here in Roanoke, which was only a few years old at that time, he came to Roanoke. And then with his uncle, became involved in what ultimately became First National Exchange Bank. And then, of course, he also was involved with the ownership of the Roanoke Times and the Roanoke World News. For most of his life, he was known as a businessman in banking and in publishing. Those two roles gave him tremendous influence in this community. He served on 30 corporate boards in Roanoke and around the state and elsewhere. So he was influential in business, and then as a publisher was able to, I think, shape opinion. And he had a very progressive spirit to him, and so he championed quietly, publicly, many initiatives that shaped Roanoke in the first half of the 20th century. And then he was a philanthropist like no other in terms of what was happening in Roanoke. He donated a tremendous amount of property that are now parks in our city today. So Wasena Park, Norwich Park, South Roanoke Park, and others. He also, this is interesting, he also helped fund the survey work that created what is today Shenandoah National Park. So not only was he into, in my opinion, kind of land conservation and recreation writ large in terms of preserving open space for recreational purposes locally, but nationally as well. He donated a couple thousand acres to the Commonwealth of Virginia down in Patrick County, which is now home to Fairy Stone State Park. His donations to a number of colleges and universities, philanthropic, charitable organizations here in the city was just tremendous. And so he had influence in multiple ways across multiple facets of the city, and really we could say the state and even the nation. When he arrived, the newspapers were already here, so he didn't start a newspaper, but he shared that folks in Roanoke, and I'm imagining that probably this business set, thought the papers were anemic, didn't think they were high quality. So he ultimately then got involved in becoming a stockholder in the Roanoke newspaper, which ultimately then his son ended up really being the publisher of. Now, sadly, his son predeceased him, and so at the time of his death, J.B. was more at the helm again, had kind of come full circle due to his son preceding him in death. They then ultimately put together what was called the Times World Corporation, which was the combining of, under the same company, the morning newspaper, which was the Roanoke Times, and the evening newspaper, or the afternoon newspaper, which was the World News. And now there were various iterations of that evening paper, over the years, but when they crafted the Times World Corporation, they then had charge of the morning newspaper, Roanoke's morning newspaper, and Roanoke's afternoon or evening newspaper. They then acquired radio station WDBJ, and then, interestingly, at the time of JB's death, head of the Times World Corporation, he had an application in at the Federal Communications Commission for a television station. And WSLS had gone on the air a few years prior, and so he was awaiting, at the time of his death, for FCC approval for WDBJ television. And so if he had lived a little while longer, under the Times World Corporation would have been the two newspapers, the radio station, or at least one of the main radio stations in Roanoke, and then one of its two television stations. So it was really quite a media corporation and company that he had put together by the time of his death. He was involved with Virginia Bridge and Iron, which was exactly what the title implies. It was a bridge and iron company here in Roanoke, a major employer here in Roanoke. And he was involved in the development of that business and served on that board for many years. Virginia Bridge and Iron ultimately got purchased by U.S. Steel and became American Bridge and Iron. And that happened prior to his death, but that was a significant corporate board that he served on. In terms of civic board, he was a huge proponent of the YMCA, and so chaired their board for many, many years and led their capital campaigns. We used to have in Roanoke, it's called the United Way or today, but it was called the Community Fund, the United Community Fund, back in the 50s. And he served on that board, chaired their annual campaign on a number of occasions here in Roanoke, which of course benefited a tremendous amount of charitable and civic enterprises and organizations. Probably of the boards he served on locally, the Virginia Bridge and Iron was probably the most significant. Now, he also served on the board of the Roanoke Electric Railway, which was the streetcar system. And so he was also chairman of that board for many years, which of course was public transportation back in the early part of the century, widely used. Almost everybody used the streetcar back in the 20s and 30s. And so those are a few of the other things that he was involved in, and I don't mean like just peripherally, I mean deeply involved in and brought leadership to. Mill Mountain was originally owned by the gas company because the gas company also was involved in other utilities as well. The gas company wanted to sell Mill Mountain, and they did. Thereafter, there came a couple of opportunities for the city to buy Mill Mountain. And each time the city was approached about purchasing Mill Mountain, they just didn't have the money. I mean, it wasn't due to lack of interest, they just didn't feel like they had the funds. And so J.B. Fishburn bought the mountaintop, held on to it for like about 2 months, and then turned around and donated it to the city, much as he did with Wasena Park and South Roanoke Park and, many of the others. Again, when you kind of sit back and think, if J.B. Fishburn hadn't done that, what might Mill Mountain, the Ridge Line, be today? If it had fallen into a private developer's hands, I'm just speculating, and gotten developed residentially, which was a big plan. A lot of people tried to do that and thought that they were going to be able to do that. We may not have today up on the top of Mill Mountain the zoo. We may not have today on top of Mill Mountain the Star. I mean, it'd be very different today if J.B. Fishburn hadn't have done what he did. So many people, and I don't know if it's an affliction of the times in which we're living in now. Man, we need the J.B. Fishburns today. Because we increasingly live in a culture where everything's about the self. And J.B. Fishburn reminds us as a significant historic figure in the city of Roanoke, that what all of us in the Roanoke Valley, and especially in the city, enjoy today, we wouldn't enjoy if it hadn't been for Mr. Fishburn, if it hadn't been for his philanthropy, if it hadn't been for his donations. We wouldn't. It'd be a very different place. Did Mr. Fishburn ever envision, for example, that through the donation of what is today Wasena Park, that after his death, the Roanoke Transportation Museum would be born there, and is today Virginia Museum of Transportation. Started in Wasena Park, started on a piece of property that he donated. And so when you sit back and you think about being, and I'm speaking as a public person, being a recipient of that charitable commitment and that civic commitment to Roanoke, and then you think about all the things that spun out of that, all of the things that happened because of that, many of which he did not live to see. I mean, it really does kind of stagger the imagination to then ask yourself the question, where would the city be today? What would the city look like today if not for J.B. Fishburn? J.B. Fishburn bequeathed his home, his personal residence, to the city of Roanoke. Did so with the desire and the purpose that it be used by the public via the city for recreational, civic purposes. And for me, you know, as a history guy, of course, I'm drawn to Mountain View because of it being a historic structure, but it is such an architectural gem in the city, and we do not have these kinds of historic homes with the architecture that this one has in our city available to the public. As a minister, I've done many a wedding on the grounds of Mountain View, and so I know how people appreciate it. A lot of bridge games have been played in the rooms over there at Mountain View, and I can remember as a kid, my dad played on a church softball team, and the Parks and Rec department was headquartered in Mountain View, and he'd circle the block. He'd drop me off on the front walk, and I'd run the roster up for our softball team, you know, up to the second floor and turn that into Fannie Boone. And I grew up in the Raleigh Court area, so, you know, I've gone past Mountain View, you know, all my life. It's just good to see that an organization has come into being, and has been for some time, that is trying to champion the restoration of Mountain View. It was given to us as a gift, and we need to preserve it and restore it and make it what JB wanted it to be to the city. My hope for Mountain View would be that it is restored, both the grounds as well as the home, and that it has the potential to be again the architectural showplace that it obviously was. You know, we just need to give it love. We need to recognize the uniqueness of the structure. We need to recognize the figure, J.B. Fishburn, who lived there, and really by way of maintaining and restoring that home, his home, we're really, by extension, honoring his gift, and we're honoring his life and his legacy, which is so important historically and even today to Roanoke. And so this is a way that we can do that. I hope that Mountain View is given the care and the love and the restoration that it needs and deserves. For me, in the context of me having been a mayor of Roanoke and knowing the history of Roanoke, I think the lasting legacy of Mr. Fishburn is just going through my mind and in thinking about what, in all probability, we would not have today in the city of Roanoke without him and without his leadership at the time, his philanthropy at the time, and his business acumen at that time. And so when I think about Mill Mountain, when I think about our parks, when I think about what this bank meant to the city of Roanoke, even beyond his death, as being one of the largest banks in the Commonwealth and one of the 300 largest banks in the nation. And so the economic growth and development that he was a part of, and the initiatives that he spearheaded, and the causes that he supported, I mean, I just have got to believe that that legacy continues to be with us today in very powerful and profound ways, both visible and unseen.
Now, you just listened to historian and former Roanoke Mayor Nelson Harris, who narrates a new video about the legacy of Roanoke icon J.B. Fishburn, builder of the historic mansion Mountain View, which will be home this fall to the Fishburn Sessions, produced by Friends of the Blue Ridge. Details about those concerts can be found at blueridgefriends.com. and you can find out more about Fishburn Mansion at friendsofmountainview.org. And finally, on today's Buzz for Good, on Thursday, August the 13th, I will start publishing on Substack excerpts of my new book, Night is Coming: The Untold Story of African American Triumph and Tragedy at Christiansburg Institute. All you need is an email address to subscribe for free, and you can find out details on my website, buzzforgood.com, BUZZ 4good.com. And here is a sneak listen, if you will, for the beginning of Night is Coming. If you can ignore the present and look far enough into the past, gazing beyond the trucks and traffic lights, subdivisions and stores, past Scattergood Church and the Dairy Queen, you can glimpse the expanse and improbable grandeur of what was once the Christiansburg Institute. First, there's the land itself, green and rolling as far as you can see, 185 acres, almost as vast as the National Mall stretching from the Washington Monument to the Lincoln Memorial. Granite bookends to our country's saga of slavery. There's the squat Mansion House, so named for the plantation owner who occupied it when not just the land was counted as his property, but the humans who worked it as well. That owner is long since dead, and in this vision, smartly dressed black students, descended from illiterate, scarred-back slaves, tote books on literature and geography as they file out the door for the day's next class. Some head to the trades building for instruction in the industrial arts, carpentry, agriculture, printing, cooking, barbering, and sewing. Others make their way to the creekside farm to weed rows of carrots and potatoes that will provide the meals in the weeks ahead for the school's couple hundred students, teachers, and administrators. Over there is newly built Morris Hall, the dormitory for the boarding girls, while the boarding boys are housed in the old slave cabins. On its steps, the great man himself, Booker T. Washington, perhaps the most famous Black American of his day, stood in 1909 and proclaimed to a mixed audience of 5,000 the merits of industrial education. Washington served as Christiansburg Institute's supervisor for 20 years following the tenure of the school's founder, a white Union officer whose legacy still lives in the name of the nearby African American church he founded, Schaefer Memorial Baptist. Nearer at hand is the Colored Hospital, built as an antidote to the prejudice that killed the man Washington brought in from his Tuskegee Institute to serve as principal. Suffering a routine case of appendicitis, Charles Marshall had been denied medical treatment at the nearby White Hospital, and by the time the black doctor from Roanoke, some 30 miles away, arrived by train, Marshall was too late to save. He was 39 years old. And of course, in the middle of it all is the Long Building. 3 stories of stout brick and mortar, the building is named for Marshall's successor and dear friend, Edgar A. Long, Washington's protege, but every ounce his unassuming equal, who channeled any ambition of nationwide prominence into shaping the lives of the black children under his charge, and the teachers who would inspire them in this rural corner of America. Though once abounding with intellectual creativity and the ambitions of a resilient race, that vision has become a distant, if not long forgotten memory, faintly echoing off the surrounding Appalachian Mountains of Southwest Virginia. The Long Building is all that's left today. That and the scrap of ground around it that survived desegregation in 1966 and the subsequent sell-off by white officials to white developers who whitewashed away the past with traffic lights and trucks, Scattergood Church, and the Dairy Queen. Of course, you have to know all that history in order to see all that past, and hardly anyone does anymore. Hardly anyone except Chris Sanchez. If he was standing here today surveying the land, he would see it all. But Sanchez is not here. Today, April 4th, 2025, Sanchez is alone in his office, his staff of 7 working remotely because it's a Friday. He's staring at his computer screen at the emails just arrived in his inbox. Despair doesn't come easily to the feisty Sanchez. Nearly a decade earlier, he had journeyed south from a Detroit suburb to found an evangelical church. Now, as executive director of the nonprofit created to preserve Christiansburg Institute's legacy, Sanchez knows he stands on the shoulders of giants: Schaefer, Washington, Marshall, Long. They had all faced down Jim Crow, lynchings, discrimination of all stripes, separate but equal, and triumphed. They had created an educational institution rivaling their model and more famous kin in Tuskegee, Alabama. Over its century of service, hundreds of African Americans, just a generation removed from the illiteracy and inhumanity of slavery, were now teachers, preachers, doctors, lawyers, military officers, farmers, bankers, bakers, barbers, and homemakers, sustaining their families and their communities through their wits and hard work. Just a 27-year-old community organizer when he was hired in 2017, Sanchez, in his first 8 years, has already survived the first Trump administration, a pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, and rise and fall of fallout from Black Lives Matter. Survived and triumphed, too. He raised funds to put a new roof on the Edgar A. Long building and pause its decay. He helped create a master site plan to redevelop the remaining 4 acres into outdoor educational trails, a trades learning center, community garden, cafe, recording studio, museum, and community gathering space. He oversaw the Truth and Reconciliation Coalition, African American Memory and Storyboard Project in the Christiansburg Town Square, which highlights the county's Black history from slavery to emancipation and education. In 2021, he was appointed by Governor Ralph Northam to the newly formed Virginia African American Advisory Board. And in 2024, he secured 2 federal grants totaling $668,000, an incredible sum for a tiny nonprofit that netted just $22,547 in total contributions the year Sanchez was hired. A staff of 1 when he arrived, Sanchez, by early 2025, now employs 7 thanks to these grants and the goodwill that he and alumni, elders he never fails to respectfully call them, have generated not just in the town of Christiansburg, but throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia and indeed to Washington, D.C. But today, April 4th, 2025, the emails inform him the Trump administration has canceled the grants. As a Black man leading a Black institution in a country that has never valued either, Sanchez has always known the work would be hard. But this feels different, institutional, deliberate, cruel. For the first time in his tenure, exhaustion overcomes him, and worse, cynicism. His grief isn't for himself, but for those looking down on him from the framed photographs hanging in his office. I do reflect on Edgar Long and Charles Marshall and everyone who made such a tremendous sacrifice that made CI produce the fruit that it did, he confides. I know they didn't always feel heroic and part of some great story. I imagine there were real moments of despair and adversity, and that's where I am now. He gazes at those men gazing back at him. Yes, he stands on the shoulders of the elders, but now he feels all too heavy, their weight on his. Again, I would be honored if you were to follow along on this journey. Night is Coming, the untold story of African American triumph and tragedy at Christiansburg Institute, via my Substack. Free subscriptions, all you need is an email. More at buzzforgood.com. And that'll do it for today's Buzz for Good. Until next time, I hope you continue being a buzz for good in the community you hold dear, and supporting those nonprofits that are working tirelessly each and every day to make your community an even better place to live. Bye now.